Joining us right now is former Florida Congressman and Fox News contributor, retired Lieutenant Colonel Allen West. Colonel West, good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us. It certainly feels like Iran has stepped up the harassment of America ever since we did the nuclear deal.
No, you're absolutely right. It's a pleasure to be with you, Maria. And it is rather Pavlovian, because when you reward bad behavior, of course, you're going to get more bad behavior. So when you think about the laundered cash that the United States of America has sent to the Iranians, $400 million, another $1.3 billion, some people believe up to $30 billion. So you have seen an increase of the harassment of our Navy ships. We all recall the 10 U.S. sailors who were taken and held at gunpoint by the Iranians, and that was put out as a propaganda piece. And now we have this threat. And it goes back, Maria, to about 4 years ago when President Obama sat down on a stage with then Russian President Dmitry Medvedev, and he said very succinctly and in an off-mic moment, tell Vladimir after my re-election I'll have more flexibility. And you think about what that flexibility has meant with our relations with Russia and what has happened in Eastern Europe, Crimea, Ukraine, and now we see what has happened in the aftermath of the Red Line and Bashar al-Assad must go. People such as these strong men only respect actions, strength, and might, and they don't see that from Barack Obama.
I think you make so many really good points. And, Caitlin, the fact is the president did have a lot of flexibility. The administration sent $1.7 billion in cold cash to Iran. And look at the treatment the country gives us now. And we know that they're the leading supporter of terrorism.
And there are so many questions that come of this. And this is something that is kind of it seems like a drip, 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 right? The lack of transparency of sorts regarding the deal, whether or not you support it, I think, you know, the more information that we have, and then you're looking at these headlines, and it just feels very insecure. And a lot of people are questioning why we engaged in this in the first place. I think, you know, there are a lot of questions to be raised on both sides of this campaign. Certainly Donald Trump's comments that are seen as more favorable to Putin need to be recognized as well. Clinton, mistakes were made in terms of looking at Putin as an ally earlier, and now only to see him, make missteps after that. People are feeling insecure about this whole thing.
Sure.
And the fact that you just brought up the Donald Trump statements on Vladimir Putin, I do want to turn back to Colonel West, and great to see you, Colonel. Good morning. You just made what I think has been probably the most articulate, fact-based case of why the weakness doctrine of the Obama administration has basically subordinated American geopolitical power in the most important volatile part of the world, which is essentially the Russian, Middle Eastern kind of corridor. What do you suggest the Trump campaign do to respond to all of these suggestions that he's cozying up too much to the bad guy, Vladimir Putin? Because clearly President Obama's actions have empowered Vladimir Putin more than Donald Trump's flattery.
Well, one of the things you can clearly mention the fact that this U.S.-Russian agreement in Syria, that is not an indicator of strength, and that shows that President Obama and John Kerry are cozying up to the Russians, because now you have given Bashar al-Assad he's become a client state, and he has become someone that will benefit from the strength of Russia there, as well as the strength of Iran, because those are the two main supporters of Bashar al-Assad. And if you go back, you can see in 1988, the last time we had a major engagement with the Iranians in the Persian Gulf was when they mined the Persian Gulf, and we had a U.S. Navy warship that was damaged, and Ronald Reagan made a clear decision. It ended up being the largest naval engagement since World War II, where we sunk or destroyed 3 to 4 Iranian ships, and we destroyed 2 platforms they were using to launch. That's what people understand. And let's be very honest, there is no such thing as a nuclear agreement, nuclear deal with Iran. They have consistently violated the terms of that agreement. They are now employing weapon systems that they're supposed to not be employing and purchasing those weapon systems, and they are on a path to developing a nuclear capability.
So what do you want to see from Donald Trump should he become president then, Colonel?
Well, it's very simple. I think that Donald Trump needs to surround himself with the type of individuals that understand geopolitics and they have been on the ground, and they realize the restoration of Reagan's maxim of peace through strength. we have to rebuild our naval and military capability capacity, because right now we are being pushed around. It's very sad. And I think that if you start to show that you will invest in in strengthening our military, which is something we're decimating right now with the Obama administration, it will send a message. It's all about having a deterrent capability first and foremost.
And that's why I think Donald Trump's most recent policy speech on military preparedness in Philadelphia was so significant, because when you look at the world, you look at Iran, it's not just saber rattling, it's not just ransom payments. Under the Obama-Clinton foreign policy, Iran now controls, outside of Tehran, its own capital, 4 Middle Eastern capitals, from Beirut to Baghdad to Damascus to Sana'a in Yemen. This has been the direct result of the subordination of our responsibility as the United States to be a force in that region. And this is where I think Donald Trump's opportunity, through a much more aggressive foreign policy and defense policy, to make that clear distinction between he and Hillary Clinton.
That's a really good point. Meanwhile, Colonel, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security says it's planning on scanning both eyes and fingers of travelers instead of relying on paperwork for those crossing borders. Homeland Security planning on introducing the scanning of 20 of the busiest airports by 2018. Your thoughts on this? Is this the kind of change you'd like to see in terms of stricter border control?
Well, first of all, you know, being a frequent traveler, I mean, most of the TSA lines already suck. I can't imagine them implementing even more measures out there, looking in my eyeballs and my fingers. Look, when I was over in Afghanistan and in Iraq, we used biometrics because there were not any paper records so that we could track individuals. I think the first and foremost, the thing that this government needs to do is just do your job. When we have these criminal illegal aliens that we know who they are and we're releasing them and we're allowing them to return back into our country, that should be the focus and that should be the concern. Let's get rid of these sanctuary cities. But now to start talking about collecting more data on American citizens, which, as we know, can easily be hacked because we know what happened with the OPM, I am not a big fan of this whatsoever.
And there's got to be a huge price tag to that also, by the way. That requires
it's your
spending.
Money. It's just your money, Maria.
Yeah.
I mean, they can just raise the taxes and they can do whatever they want.
Well, that's in the plan, certainly. Lieutenant Colonel, good to see you. Thank you so much. Lieutenant Colonel
Always a
Alan
pleasure.
West joining us there.